Good morning. I'm Randy, and I'm here with Jeremiah, and we discuss life's hard financial questions, and we're here to help you make decisions about your money.
Randy and I are both certified financial planners, and I'm also a California licensed attorney. Today, we are talking about what do you do with your 401k? What do you do with your retirement plan when the market is down?
Right.
Right now, we're in a spot where the markets are down. And so people who are looking at their retirement and worrying, what should they do?
And I think obviously what we talk about is what is the client's exit strategy, and not so much that you get out of the market, but more importantly, how do you take your required minimum distributions if you're in retirement? And what's happening, what we refer to in Jeremiah in our language is called sequence of returns. So when the market has a downturn like it has in the last 6 months, people have a tendency to look at the underlying balance, the total, and they're saying, well, I'm down 10%, I'm down 5%, or maybe in some cases they're down substantially more than that. And they're starting to panic like that's going to disappear, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we've gone through recessions in the past. We've gone through corrections in the past. And over time, clients' accounts continue just to grow and continue to be bigger, larger balances in the future as they are right now.
Yeah, we can put a little bit of specifics to how people use their retirement. So,
Right.
Everyone who's sitting out there, they see the market down. Maybe they're down 20, 25%, and it feels what's going to happen? Is my
Right.
retirement in jeopardy? And we get those questions a lot from especially new clients that come to us saying, help, what do we do? And
Right.
first is kind of looking at, what is their plan to use their retirement funds? Right now the government makes you take them out at age 72. They're called a required minimum distribution, meaning each year you have to take out some portion of your retirement account and put it into your regular account, and that becomes taxable.
In the percentage, it's actually a divisor, isn't it? I mean, it takes your age. There's a mortality schedule, but I always tell people that it's about 3.5% to 4%. And it's just an easy, I'd rather work on percentages than a
Yeah.
divisor. But
Yeah, it makes more
it
sense
goes
to
up.
people.
It goes up a little bit every single year, or I should say the divisor gets less. So that means that you're taking in a little higher percentage of your balances. And just to be clear, it's what the balance is on December 31st of the year prior, and that's what the IRS uses for your required minimum distribution, isn't it?
And someone who's it used to be age 70, and then recent laws changed it to 72. There's even laws in the works at the moment that might push it to 73, 74, or even 75.
Yeah, I mean, the legislation now says 73 next. If this passes, most likely it will. It'll be 73 will be the required minimum distribution age next year, and it'll rise to 74 by 2030 and to 75 by 2033. So that's going to have some impact on people, particularly if they're younger and they're not taking RMDs right now.
Yeah, and the idea is that your retirement funds, when you think of it, that's your nest egg for the future. You don't have to use it until you need
Right.
it, unless
Right.
you hit these ages, 73, 74, 75, currently under current law 72. You have to take out a small piece of it. But for a lot of clients, I think there's an innate fear when they see the markets go down that their accounts are worth less, and because they're retired, they just can't have them go down. Like they have to have them always high. And almost the idea that if it goes down, they're going to have to take all the money out in one moment, and it's not going to be enough. When the reality is, you only have to take out, before your RMD ages, you only have to take out what you need, if you need it that year. And then after your RMD ages, you have to then just take out that bit. Like you said, 3.5%, 4%. And I think it's important for most people to know that historically, in the average bear market, it takes 24 months for it to go from the high water mark. We get a recession, it goes down, we kind of hit a bear market, and it comes back up. To get back to that same level is 24 months. That's the average. Each one's a little different, but that's what we're looking at. So even someone who's retired who thinks, oh no, I'm retired, I'm in that category that can't have my accounts go down, most people are still looking at 5, 10, 15 years ahead of them. And so to have a 2-year dip and then come back just means you don't do house projects as much that year. You're trying to limit.
You don't dip into the principal. You don't
Yeah.
go in and just take out hunks and bunches of money to do things. Hopefully, with proper planning, they've got most of that done before they step into retirement.
That's right.
As far as home improvements.
Yeah, that's right. We do, with a lot of our clients, we talk about what do you do before retirement, of how do you get your ship in order to sail through. And I like what we just said, Randy. There's a big difference of what should be in someone's portfolio who's my age, mid-career, working. I have a lot of growth-oriented, value-oriented things that aren't paying out dividends necessarily, things that are, I want them to be bigger.
Or versus mine. I'm getting closer to that RMD age, and the kind of assets that I want are more income-based and more stable, more value-based structures.
Yeah, and when you say income-based, just so everyone kind of gets what that means, like it's bonds that are paying out a monthly dividend, or it's stocks, like Microsoft is a good example. Microsoft is a great stock, but they pay a quarterly dividend, and it comes out. So we have a number of clients of people that are in retirement age that we structure the portfolio so that the amounts that are going to have to come out as RMDs, maybe they have to take $10,000 out every year. Well, if their portfolio is making $10,000 of dividends, then they don't have to sell anything. So whether the markets go up or down at the moment, they don't really care. They're getting the same dividends.
And we've got several clients where we look at it and they're taking out, they're actually pre-RMD age, but they're taking out a certain percentage, a certain dollar amount. And the way that their contracts are structured is they're just taking out the interest. And we're starting to see advantage because with this Federal Reserve right now tightening interest rates, CD rates now are actually coming off the floor. In other words, we're getting some lift here in bonds and CD rates that we can get 2 to 3%, in some cases a little bit higher. So it helps us with the income structure, so we're not having to struggle with bank rates at less than 0.5%, which just makes it difficult for distributions.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this last year, probably even 3, 4, 5 months ago, CDs were still paying, like you said, less than 1%. It was almost insulting to get the interest. Whereas I think recently I looked at their 2.6 is what I saw. They're coming back. But for a lot of folks, as they're looking at retirement, those big ticket items, hopefully you've taken care of those before retirement. And then if you get into a moment where the market is down, for most people, you just kind of hunker down. You don't have to sell things. You don't have to shift things. And now is not the moment to say, hey, my portfolio is all wrong. I got to get into a different portfolio. This was the planning that needs to happen before you retire. So as you approach retirement, that's when you want to start having those conversations and those thoughts to say, how can I get a portfolio that is still going to grow into my future, still going to hit all my needs going forward, but is less related on assets that grow that I need to sell, but more are just producing income for me that I can use for my RMDs.
Yeah, you have to look at it. What we try to do is to create pension-like returns. So, if you take your retirement account and you give it to an insurance company or you leave it with your company that you retired from, they give you a fixed rate of return. But they also don't give you there's no legacy to that. In other words, it stays within the pool, and they wrestle with it. Now, as a recipient, all you receive is the monthly income for the rest of your life, and maybe your spouse's life too. But understand there's guardrails on that, and for those guardrails, you're going to end up paying a cost for that, a lower return. First of all, you're not going to have as much to give to your children if that's one of your goals as far as legacy planning. There's some other factors into that to create that kind of what I call that security blanket. And so you have to be careful what choices you make and why you make them. So.
Yeah. Another thing I want to bring up in this conversation is, we're talking about how you use your 401k. Most people take draws throughout the year. And we've mentioned this before, but the idea is that you don't get to the start of a year and take out 40 grand. And say, that's what I'm going to need this year, take out 40 grand and use it. The idea is to get as little as you need at the moment. So most people who are using their retirement accounts, they take a monthly or a quarterly distribution and let the rest of it grow. And for people who don't need the money, that's where I feel like we get into this more interesting planning options. And people who don't need the money might be someone who has a pension, might be someone who has just a large savings account, someone whose monthly bills, if they pay off their mortgage, they're not traveling this month, their life may be fairly small. And so the question is, well, what do you do if you have to take this out?
Yeah, and I think that the wealth effect is going to have a natural, I hate to use the word recessionary, but I think people will slow down in their spending because they listen to the talking heads, they read the news, and then they look at their statements and they say, oh my goodness, I've lost whatever dollar amount. You haven't lost as much as you're just seeing the market valuation adjustments. And if you've got good assets, those assets will roll through any kind of adjustment or down, corrections that we're going through at this stage. So I think for most people, it's understanding. I always look at a barometer from a standpoint of doing progress meetings with clients. And if the clients at cash accounts, in other words, the money they have in savings and their checking is building up, And if they're taking out distributions they don't need to, I'll say, come on, let's not do that, because that is all it's doing is depleting your future investment account, and you don't need it right now. But a lot of times people just don't realize they do that. So what we do is we sit down with them, and one of the things we do in our progress meetings is try to determine what their balances are in these other accounts. And if they're not spending it, that money is just building up. And let's just taper this off. Let's back this off a little bit and allow for this correction time to go through, right?
Yeah, that's right. And just have time to take a reprieve if you can. The other option is when people are past the required minimum distribution age, 72 at the current law,
Right.
they have to take out a certain amount. Like you said, it's usually 3.5%, 4%. It changes by your age. And some folks just take the money because they have to and they're taxed on it. We have a number of folks who will look at what's called qualified charitable distributions. And you have to wait till you're over 70.5, and if you're 72, it'll count as your RMD. But basically what you can do is, rather than taking money and making a deduction, you can just take that money directly from your RMD, have it count as your RMD, and give it directly to a charity.
Right.
And we have a number of clients who don't need the income, or they don't want it at this moment. They want to be taxed this year. And so they'll pull out that money and they'll send it and use that as their charitable giving vehicle rather than cash that might be in their bank accounts.
I love this instrument because not only is it a way to give and to lower your taxable income, but for some people, it's not for everybody, but for some people, it actually lowers their Medicare premium cost. And so, because your Medicare premium cost is based upon your modified adjusted gross income, I don't want to get into too much technicality here, but for some clients, that actually reduces it down, so it brings your cost of Medicare down by doing a charitable, qualified charitable deduction or distribution.
Yeah.
It's a great tool to use, and you do that in your planning process.
Yeah, and you get to skip out on the income, which, while
Right.
you're working, working years, people want the income. But when you get to retirement, it's really interesting of how, people, their view of income shifts. And for many people, it's actually avoiding some of the income because you're avoiding some of the taxes. And like you said, it brings down not just your income tax, but it could be your Medicare tax. It could be a number of things.
And I think just to kind of round out here, I mean, you got to remember that they've made some changes in required minimum distributions. It used to be for non-spouses, the non-spouse beneficiaries could take it out over their lifetime. The IRS came back and said, no, that was not our intention. They cut it back and they said only to spouses. They can extend it out over their lifetime, and or disabled children. You can, in some instances, you can stretch it out over their lifetime, so it can be very beneficial. But in general, if you are receiving a IRA from your parents, you're not going to be able to stretch it out over your lifetime. You're going to have to use a 10-year rule. In that 10-year rule, there's some flexibility as to if your parents were already taking it out or if they were before the start of it. So all those issues kind of come into play, and that's where you want to do some very specific tax planning so you're being efficient on that.
Yeah, and that idea of the 10-year rules that you have to take out the money within 10 years. And for a number
Right.
of new clients, that's a surprise. They didn't realize that the law changed on that.
Right.
That if they inherit, a nice account from their parents, they could take a little bit each year. They could wait till the 10th year and take it all. They could do whatever they'd like as far as within those 10 years. But by that 10th year, they've got to get it all out of that plan and get taxed on it. And being strategic there is really important.
So again, I think to wrap up this particular section, this subject matter, is that it's not just a simple one and done. There's a lot of factors that go into it. We want to come alongside of our clients to help them understand what all those factors are and help them make the right choice for them. And that could be something that might be proper now, in other words, the best choice today, but it may be different next year because we don't know, what the tax laws are going to change. I mean, all this stuff is always kind of in flux.
If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can leave it in the comments below, or you can go to our website. It's retirementunlimited.com.